Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming or joining and listening in on the block number two. So we had Jack Dorsey on a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really excited to talk to Brad Axen. So Brad is one of the small group of people who has built Goose and has built a lot of our AI tooling at Block that I know I've had a lot of conversations with folks. I think it's incredibly differentiated. And it's been really fun for me personally to start building on this stuff a lot more and hacking together probably mediocre demos, but then get it in the hands of people that actually can do stuff with it. Um, and so for anyone who was wanting to know how Goose got his name, we'll probably answer that, but maybe do that a little bit later. Brad, I'd love to start on just your background and where you've been in your career, how you got into computer science generally, and just like what you spent your time doing, both maybe pre and what your time at Block.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah. Thank you for the intro too. Excited to talk about a lot of this stuff. But my background, I actually originally did most of my like serious programming in academia. So I started in physics, and got a PhD. Worked on particle physics and worked at the like Large Hadron Collider. If y'all have heard about that. And you don't necessarily think of that as a programming heavy place, but it really is. It's like extremely high scale data analysis, and we kind of built a lot of novel systems to handle the data that we were collecting back then. And it bridged really smoothly into machine learning, which was how I came into tech. So my first job at Block was doing growth machine learning, and then I worked on lending. And then the last 2 or 3 years, I've switched to working on more or less full time on AI and applied AI.
So what was that transition like going from, or like, what do you observe in AI that made you want to pivot a bit into going from lending and machine learning and just like building that capability set for Block into more full time like developing AI tooling and just everything that you've done there? Like what led to that transition in your career?
So for me, it was definitely just seeing the potential of the new technology, right? I think even though this was like in the early days where there was a lot more skepticism, I feel like no one is very skeptical anymore, which makes sense. So back then it was a little bit less obvious what it could do, but we were seeing it be very useful for people to help automate small parts of their job. And that plus the growth curve of like, oh, every 6 months we were getting a dramatic performance improvement just made it so obvious to me that this was going to change things and made it really exciting to work on. And so right from the get-go, I think the main thing that I found motivating was figuring out how to take the current state-of-the-art models and then actually apply them into doing useful things more than just having a conversation with it, actually using it for day-to-day work.
So like what have you been up to then in the last 2 to 3 years? So I know you kind of kind of like applied science or something maybe, but taking the foundation models and just everything that exists there and making them useful. Just talk about like what you spent your time doing.
Yeah, I think so. The underlying theme is building agents, and I think so. I often say I work in applied AI, and what I mean by that again is like taking those foundational LLMs and connecting them into systems that let them actually take actions for people and be really useful day to day. And I work on that both like we already mentioned Goose, so I was the original author of Goose, and that's a productivity tool that was originally for developers, like software engineers, but increasingly for the entire company. And actually, I think we've done that for a long time. So we use these agents and we use them to speed ourselves up. But I also work throughout our AI products. So, for example, I think probably a lot of people are familiar with moneybot, which is fairly generally available at this point, and then managerbot, which is in beta. And so those are also examples of taking those foundational LLMs and applying them to real world problems. For moneybot, it's like applying it to your personal finances, and managerbot, it's applying it to run a business.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk a little bit about moneybot and managerbot and builderbot, which I actually started spending a lot more time with this morning for the first time, and it was really cool. I've shown it to a few folks like on Slack, but I was actually like, building something today, and it was a lot of fun. But maybe before getting into some of those specific like application endpoints for AI, can we talk just a little bit about like the AI tech stack? And so I'm sure everyone is familiar with OpenAI and Anthropic, at least like at a conceptual level. But just talk about like what the tech stack looks like in terms of like foundation models as its own separate entity, and then like agents on top of them, and how those two things differ from each other and how they interrelate.
Right, right. Um, so I like foundational models in a way because even though there's this incredible amount of complexity in what they can do and how intelligent they are, they're a really simple concept. And the foundational models really just take text in and then give you text out. And I think the insight that came with ChatGPT was that you could turn that like low level tool into a conversation by kind of teaching it that instead of just continuing with whatever the person said to it, it was going to be replying to what the person said, like it's a conversation. And so that I think was that first like layer on top of the foundational LLMs that really changed it and made it something you could interact with. And so and then the second, like sometime around 2024, everyone started realizing that the models were getting good enough that that output that they create in text could be code. And so agents is kind of that idea of having a conversation, taking that one step further and asking the model to write some code for you, and then the agent actually executes it. So that's like the foundational stack that we're talking about. And this is like, and then we've since like kind of in the industry called this tool calling. And that's the foundation for agents and is what gives it the arms and legs to go interact with the world. So you kind of ask the foundational LLM to write small pieces of code, and then you set it up in a system where that code is going to get executed, and then it goes and does things.
Mm-hmm.
So with something like Goose, that means helping you build software. With something like moneybot, it could mean like analyzing your transaction data and giving you some insights about where your money is going. So then let me say a little bit about like what I think is the current like the current model generations are incredible. There's several that are fantastic. So like you mentioned Anthropic and OpenAI, like Opus 4.6 and GPT 5.4 are both extremely powerful models that take this to like another step where those agents can really do like a large fraction of what a human can do. And that's also true for a lot of the open source models, like GLM5 is super impressive, and increasingly these are kind of getting more and more interchangeable. In the early days, you would maybe have to have a customized agent for every model. Now we're finding that you can easily switch between them and get really high quality outputs. And yeah, I can say more about that, but let me stop there. I'm curious if you have more questions.
No. I mean, I think like I do. I want to spend time on the foundation models, and I kind of been describing it to folks as like a 0 to 1, which is probably not accurate, or like a big bang in December, January timeframe of Opus 4.6 and like what came like relative to what came before that. But before we do that, I want to go back in time a little bit. So you said you started
Yeah.
talking about, or you started like developing Goose and agentic interfaces in early 24. It seemed like I think we had a really early perspective relative to the industry that we'd be able to differentiate on agentic interface, and that if you think about like as you were saying earlier, like as agents as the arms and legs, like if you're going to actually execute work in like an enterprise environment, now increasingly even like in a personal environment like CloudBot and things, that agents were going to be the way in which you would do that. So what drove that perspective that these foundation models are fantastic, but what's actually going to enable you to execute the work is agentic infrastructure? And like, so what drove that perspective, and why did we start building this in 24?
But I think so. So yeah, in early 24, I may be getting the timeline wrong, but the sometime around 24, we were like everyone was talking about how these models could write code, and there was a lot of truth to it. It was like in a way more compelling equivalent to like Google search, right? Like where you're like, I don't know how to do this. Can the model give me like a little snippet that I could use? But it was all conversational. Like you were just asking it
Mm.
for examples or tips. And those earlier models. They were impressive in many ways because they kind of knew a little bit about everything. Still true, but now they're very, very effective at writing code. And back then it was a little bit smaller scale. And I at the time, we like a lot of us found that experience more compelling than some of the tech at the time that was popular, like line completions, which was also AI driven, but it was you were in your editor, you started typing, and it would try to like finish the line for you. We found it a lot more intuitive to learn and move faster by asking for like larger scale examples. But the problem there was that it was actually just a really inconvenient workflow. So you were like it didn't do anything for you. It just told you how to do things yourself, and so you were like transcribing what it did. And so a lot of that early or those early days work were literally just trying to get the model to say things in a consistent way so that you could detect that it was trying to give you code that was helpful, and then you would like automatically figure out how to run that or put it into your files. Um, and so around that time, they actually like OpenAI put that into their APIs as like a tool calling spec, so that you could actually like more directly get that kind of output. And even back then, it wasn't super consistent. So we did all of this work to try to get a consistent workflow where you could just ask the agent to do work and walk away and come back and like see what it had done. Um, I think the main motivation behind that was just trying to actually use the tools and those like state of the art models to go interact with what we were doing internally. That was the first motivation for sure. And it was a bit of a mix of like literally just being enthusiastic about what that could do for us as developers, and then also thinking about that being a testing ground for how could we apply this technology for our customers too.
Mm-hmm. And so we've kind of circled around it a little bit, but all of this, this early insight and like your perspective on this and other folks' perspectives like led to us creating Goose.
Mm-hmm.
It's like us, like the royal term, like I'm on the sports team, like when I say like the Celtic, like we won, the Celtics won, but us meaning you and a few other folks that like actually developed Goose. So maybe just like taking a step back, what is Goose? Um, and like how did Goose come out? How did the idea originate? I know you talked a little bit about that in the prior answer, but I'd love to just understand
Yeah.
what Goose is.
Yeah, and so it's back to that when we were talking about the how the LLMs work, and then the agent being the thing that executed the code it wrote. Goose is that second half. And so if you're looking around the industry, I think the standard terminology we're using these days is calling it an agent harness. It's kind of the system that asks the LLM to take actions based on what the human is looking to do,
Uh-huh.
and then going and reaching out to all of the different tools that it needs to take those actions. And Goose is an agent harness. It's open source. I think we were one of the earliest. A little like we had. So I think we were really early too. That I'm more confident in saying is that we had a desktop interface that was a little bit more approachable for non-engineers. Really early. So kind of if you haven't tried Goose, the closest equivalent today is Cowork from Anthropic. So if people, I think people are really excited about that lately. Goose, we had that in uh, you know February of last year, and so that's something that our employees have been using for a really long time. And the reason why I bring that up as another interface is because that core idea in Goose of it taking actions for you definitely started with developers in mind, like writing code, editing files, and helping you build software. But increasingly, it's something that everybody is using. So at Block, I think it's, as you were saying before, like pretty much everybody at the company uses AI all the time to just do operational tasks, like interacting with your Google Docs or helping you build a spreadsheet, summarizing Slack, catching up on your email. We've been doing that for a long time. And so Goose is general purpose in that sense. It can help you with all kinds of tasks. And then, of course, me as a software developer, I use it to build things. And that's also a really cool thing I've been seeing. So you mentioned you were trying out Builderbot this morning. We'll talk more about that. But
Yeah.
the other incredible thing that we see with tools like Goose is that other job profiles at the company are now building prototypes. And it's this more like efficient and fluid way of talking about what we want to do for our customers. It's like, oh, let me show you, rather than just going through a long planning process.
That's been like really, it's been amazing for me as someone who's not technical, but I've been in the industry for 12 15 years now and have a lot of ideas like, oh, maybe we should do this. And it was, if I go back to the beginning of 2024, it was very like me verbalizing what I wanted to do, and it was kind of hard to describe. And then I'll never forget, about, I think it was May of last year, I was at an investor conference with Jack, and I was talking about Goose and like just AI tooling in general. And just talking about like I was having a hard time like figuring it out or like actually getting it to execute stuff for me. And he said, don't ask it how to do something, tell it to do the thing that you want done, and it will do it. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment. It's like I was basically using it like the early LLM models that you were talking about, where I was like asking like how would I do this, and he's like just you don't have to do that. Just tell it that you
Yeah.
want this thing done, and it will do it.
Yeah, that's right. And like this is, and I think what's been really fun watching this space go, right, is that we kind of advance on two frontiers. One is like making the agent better, which is the thing I work on all day. And the other is that the LLMs just keep getting much better. So very excited for the like continued progress there. And so it, like to your point about like you just to go ask it to do something for you, middle of last year, that meant it might be able to like build you a chart or two, or like go build you like a single page website. Now you can do that same thing, and you're like, show me a demo of what our product would look like if we added these 7 new features,
Yeah,
and that is like the level of capability. And again, all you have to do is know what you're looking for and explain to it like what you want to see. Is extreme. They're all now extremely tenacious in like solving those problems for you, which I think is really cool. And then there's obviously a lot we could talk about in terms of like making reliable production ready software, which is where I spend a lot of my time these days. But in the prototyping world, I think it's just super compelling, and pretty much anyone now can build great prototypes.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so you mentioned this term earlier with tool calling and like the conversations that I've had with you and other folks talking about like agentic systems as basically like really good tool calling systems. Can you just talk about like what that or explain what that means to people and just like like help us understand that concept?
Yeah, this is my whole life now, by the way. So I'll try to keep it high level, but we can dig in as much as you want. So there's two aspects to this. One is literally just coming up with the tools and enabling them, and that is a real art in some ways too. So like what are the tools that the model needs access to do what you want it to do? And in in probably most of the agents that people are familiar with, like if you've used open source Goose or Claude Code or Codex or AMP, any of these things, there's this like core kit that we all have come to expect of it editing files and running commands on your computer. That's like incredible for software development, and it goes a really long way. But when you want it to start interacting with the rest of what you do at work, you have to go enable, like design what tools will be effective for it to solve other kinds of problems. And some of that's just simple stuff like, oh yeah, it needs to be able to read Google Docs
Mm-hmm.
or edit a Google spreadsheet. That like opens up a whole new world for people where it can like interact in the finance space. Um, then another example of that is like recently, I think a thing that has changed how I think about working with AI is that we've enabled we've put them in Slack and then given them access to just read our code. Obviously, from Slack, you don't want it to be like editing code, but in Slack, it can read code. So suddenly now, at any point when you're having a technical conversation with people in Slack, you can just ask the bot to like read through all of our existing code bases and explain how something works today or how we can change it to do something new. Those are the kinds of things that we work on when we talk about really high quality tool calling. It's just like, what is it connected to, and what does that enable for the people who are working with the agent? Then the second half of that, that's critical and way lower level, is how do you make those tools performant for the LLM? And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and it's things like you'll hear terms like context engineering, where we talk about like making sure you precisely control what the LLM sees so that it knows what it needs to know, but it doesn't take up too much space. And then like a lot of work like that that goes into the tool calling system. And so I think the thing I'm like very proud of what we did inside Block is that our agents can interact with pretty much everything we use as an enterprise to do work. So they're like extremely comprehensive. And I think we do a really good job of optimizing their efficiency and making them more and more ambitious in what they can do.
Mm-hmm. So we talked earlier about we were really early on just thinking about agentic harnesses and like how that would be the way things would get done. I don't even know if we have an answer to this question, but why do you think we were so early to this? Is it like something cultural? Is just like you and a few other folks like happen to be here at the right time? Just like why do you think we were so early to this like realization that we made a bet like a long time ago now and it actually was right?
Right. Yeah, I think there's always like always a little bit of like, serendipity there, but I will say that this is part of the answer to this question is also why I really enjoy working at Block. And that's because I think as a company, a culture, like a leadership team, we are always encouraging everyone to be on the frontier of technology. And that is not just like a kind of a notion or like an ideology. I mean that is specifically in the sense of if you are working on something that looks like it has potential, we will clear the time that you need to follow through on that. And so I think there was definitely like right idea, right time was part of it, but another big part of it was that once we saw that there was some promise, we were able to carve out a small team and let them run with it. And this was not any of our jobs when we started working on it. It was like something that became an organization because the idea was working. And so I don't know that every company does that in the same way. Like I think, and we've have a long track record of doing this in different technology spaces at Block. So it was this kind of expectation that as long as we were showing that there was potential, we'd be able to work on it and put the time it needed to like develop it into a real thing. And I think that also carried through not just in like getting that initial idea out into the world, but um, we kind of did this in we so one big part of this is that it's all open source. And so we when we had this idea, we got it out there and started sharing it with the community. But at the same time as we open sourced it, we made it available to all employees, like not just engineers. And I think we did that really, really early, and that has given us this like feedback system internally. Like 10,000 people have used Goose um, internal, and that's something that we can iterate on. And like again, I think that's like that we bring that back to the open source version, but also like we were talking about inside Block, it's connected to everything we do. And we got there because we encouraged everyone to use it and to tell us like what else could they do with it.
Yeah. You mentioned open source a few times. Like, why did we decide to open source it?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of answers to this. One, as like a tech person myself, our whole company and the whole industry runs on open source technology. So we get an incredible amount out of open source. And I think we're generally just excited to be able to contribute back to that community. And so I think in one way, we were really motivated to open source Goose just to say, we think we have something cool here. Um, we want other people to try it and use it and like benefit from it if there's anything there. But then I think another real big angle to this is that we believe that by open sourcing a tool like this, it will become a better tool. Like it's ultimately the play, like going into an open conversation, having contributors from outside our company makes it better, and is in the long run, all of our best technology is maintained and developed by open source communities. And I think it's just because we get so many ideas that from outside like the scope of one company, and that gives us this like long-term trajectory that I think beats proprietary tech most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah. All right, maybe the last question on Goose, which is maybe the most important, but how did Goose get its name?
Yeah. So I think I always hate saying the answer here but I think the cat's out of the bag at this point. So it is indeed a Top Gun reference. Um, so this was like early 2024. We were talking about, what would be a good co-pilot name, and we were
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like in the office like discussing like, okay, what are some famous co-pilots? And so we went with Goose. Since we did that though, I think um, the thing that really saved us on the branding is just that like Goose as the animal has like a lot of great like content. So I actually am glad we like leaned away from the the piloting a jet and more towards Goose the bird.
for the
Yeah,
bird. You also
yeah.
like kind of look like Goose yourself, so I think there's a little bit of an element there too, which maybe you don't want to say yourself, but I think I could throw that out there also.
I actually did I did do a Halloween costume as Goose from Top Gun, and it worked pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Um, and so maybe like spending a minute on you personally, but like what what's your role or what has your role been like in the AI industry? I think you were the first person to contribute to MCP outside of Anthropic. Like, is that right? Just like talk about like what your role is in AI and open source and getting away from like your day to day in block. Like, I think
Yeah.
you and a few of the folks on the team have like a bigger presence just in the AI development space generally.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's true. We before a little bit before MCP was publicly released, we were talking to Anthropic about agents and Goose and saying like, hey, we like where the main problem we're having with Goose is that people want to do so many things with it. We need a protocol so that people can plug in new systems without us having to be a bottleneck on what they can do. And so we got to meet with the team developing MCP, like David, and they were like, "Oh, we have something for this. We're going to release this." And so we like took a look, had some conversations about it, added a few contributions, um, and since then, this is like a relationship that keeps growing. So we have some members of the Goose team at Block are on the MCP steering committee, and we contribute and we kind of help build the Rust SDK, which is now mostly actually maintained by some fantastic contributors outside of Block, but we got that started. And then more recently, we've been so the Linux Foundation has started a new sub foundation, the Agentic AI Foundation, and that is a home for currently MCP from Anthropic, agents.md from OpenAI, and then Goose from Block. And so we were the three founding members there, and so I'm now on the technical steering committee, and we'll, I think, in the near future, be bringing in many more projects into that AI foundation. And I think the way to think about that foundation, by the way, is kind of helping to define what the effective stack is for building with AI. And so MCP is a really core component of that. I could talk more about MCP, by the way, if we want to get into it. But MCP is a core component. Agents.md is a really successful specification for how people can customize how AI works. And I think of Goose as the kind of reference implementation. Like it's an actual concrete thing that people can just go download and use that shows how all the pieces fit together. So I hope that this foundation is the thing that over time does what some of the other open source foundations do, where it like kind of defines and moves forward the stack that lets people solve problems with AI.
Yeah, and it's worth reiterating. I know you just said this, but three founding members, OpenAI, Anthropic, and us. It's pretty remarkable that there's like that level of like interrelationship between Block and like some of the people that are driving the AI industry forward.
Yeah, I mean it's an incredible opportunity, and I think the the role we the I think the role Block plays here that I think we do uniquely well is the application of the technology.
Yeah,
And so, like I mentioned, Goose is kind of the concrete of the founding projects. Goose is the most concrete. It's something that someone can actually go use. And I think we do that in our products as well. Like like moneybot, managerbot, or Square AI, which has also been available for a long time now, are like really fantastic examples of some of the like state of the art ways to apply AI to real world problems. And so I think that's a big part of why we're in that conversation, is because we're helping to define like how to apply those technologies to become like useful products for our customers.
yeah, um, yeah. I think that the element of like applying all of this work to like actually benefit our customers is just so foundational to obviously to what we think about. And I do think that there's something interesting about our culture here. Where you talked about this earlier, but being on the frontier of technology, like it just giving people the freedom and license that if there's something promising, going to do it and chase it down. And sometimes that will mean like things don't work, and you go back to the drawing board or you go back to what you're doing before. It's like, okay, I chased this thing and kind of ran into a dead end. But then there's times where like a Cash App emerges or a Goose emerges, or like
Right.
these really like foundational things to the business, and getting like the opportunity for people to work on that, I think is pretty unique here.
Yeah, completely agree. And I really do think that this is a thing internalized well. Like I don't think we need to tell people to do this kind of work. It's
Yeah.
definitely not, like people just do it. And then sometimes incredible things come out of ideas that someone just had while they were working on their day job.
Yeah. So I know we're I'm just mindful of time. I want to make sure a couple of other things I want to make sure we talk about. But we talked a lot about, like, I would say, like the compounding of the work that we've done in agentic infrastructure in the last like 2 or 2
Mhm.
plus years. I would love to talk a little bit more about what happened in December and January timeframe around the foundation models themselves. And when we've talked to a lot of folks about like how we're thinking about the organization going forward on the investor side, it is a combination of like I think we were really early on the agentic infrastructure and just compounding all that learning for the last several years. But then there's also this like moment in time where like just the world changed. So can you talk about like what happened in December, January? What's different today versus even 6 months ago, and like just talk about what that looks like, or what that looked like.
I this is funny because I think about this a lot, and it if you've been in the space and like working with these models and you like look at the code from that was written by the models before Opus and Codex 5.3 and then after, it doesn't look that different. And so you're like I'm constantly asking like what was it that flipped? And I think what happened was that the models hit a level of like reliable execution that it kind of went from a thing that you had to watch and course correct, like similar capabilities, but a lot of failures.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they have become a thing that more or less works in one go. And that by itself is like useful, but it's not this like giant shift or this like phase change that we're experiencing alone. The reason why it became a giant change is because once everyone realized that they were like 90% likely to do what you wanted them to do, we've started to build systems on top of them that did more things in parallel or like did many executions in a row or ran it remotely or overnight. And because the reliability went up, that means that you can build these higher level tools that do way more work. And so we see that one really concrete example in something like Goose, but it's in most of the agent harnesses now, is this idea of sub agents. And so you have one parent that is like talking to the human about a high level goal, and then it dispatches to many um, individual sub agents in parallel. And so it used to, like, we've had this idea for a long time, but it didn't work as well before because they would fail more often than not. And it was just kind of frustrating and you had to like micromanage them, right? Now you can have one agent orchestrate 10 agents and they mostly do what they need to do. And so you've got this like kind of 10x multiplication there of what it's going to take on through this like higher level system development. So I think that's the phase shift that is really happening. And you see that in all of these like new tools that are trying to help you manage running like 10 agents at a time, or a lot of people posting on Twitter about how they've got like 18 terminal windows open that are all working. That's what changed, is that they're all so reliable that you can be running a lot of them at once, and we're just like scaling out how much we can run agents to do. And so for me, that means that like you were saying with like something like Builderbot, we can have someone just ask for a feature on Slack, and then it just goes and works for an hour and comes back to you. And a lot of the time, it did what you wanted it to do, and it's like good, high quality work that you can just go start merging into production.
Yeah. Yeah, the parent and like sub agent piece I find fascinating. Like I was running an analysis earlier this week, and I just asked Claude like, what are you actually doing right now, or something
Yeah,
like that, and it said I have it right here. It's like I'm in the spawning phase. I have 4 analyst agents launched in
yeah,
parallel: segment analyst, a risk impact analyst, a benchmark analyst, and an operational analyst. They're all doing like different components of the research I wanted it
yeah.
to do, and then I came back and it was like a really good research report that would have taken me like I don't know, hours or days to do, and it was just done.
Yeah.
Uh,
And like I think the real thing that's happening is they used to try that idea as well, but it was like chaotic
yeah,
because those sub agents would fail so much that it would just kind of devolve and spiral. And so I think the real flip of the switch was that they started succeeding more than failing, so that instead of it being chaotic, it's mostly self-correcting. And so suddenly you can just do these incredibly ambitious things.
yeah. So talk a little bit about so I want to talk about product development generally, and we'll probably bring in like Builderbot and those kinds of things, but maybe just your day to day. So if we go back to, let's say, like December 2023, maybe like right before Goose, like before you started maybe spending most or all your time on building Goose, like what's your day to day like today versus then in terms of just like building stuff and how the world's different for like a development organization?
It's like it's so incredibly different. I think most people have this experience now. Uh, an example of this um, is that I have literally uninstalled all of my code editors. Like I do not write any code by hand anymore, and I think that's really really common. Um, and so that like it couldn't be more night and day, right? Also, another thing that is an example of that is that I no longer care what programming language I'm using, which is just so enabling for me as an individual because I like so my background is mostly in Python. I still think I can write decent Python if I need to, but I've never been any good at front end development or TypeScript. And so that's something that, where I can just go build interfaces now. And it doesn't matter that I'm good at TypeScript. It matters that I know what I wanted to do and that and for in terms of like writing high quality production software, it also matters that I know how to test and like how to confirm failure modes and like make sure things are working the way that they are expected to work. But those are transferable skills from one language to another. So that's I think that's like a huge difference is that I write now in like 5 or 6 languages a day, and I don't need to be an expert in any of them individually. There's so many more things like that in software development that have changed. The other thing is that I'm multitasking like crazy. I think this is true for everyone. That's not just a developer thing now. So like I always try to have like 7 or 8 things that I could work on at any given time. And when I have a new idea, I just go find one of the interfaces that I'm using to manage agents and then go send one off and let it do the work. And then I come back to it an hour later and review what it did. So it's a lot more of this like kind of it's a lot like working in an organization in some ways, like where you're talking to multiple people, they're all doing work, and you've kind of moved up one level, and it's almost like you're orchestrating a system of agents rather than looking at like individual code changes. So huge difference in software development. So that's the question of like the how. The what has also changed a lot. Obviously, like we're as an organization applying AI into our internal productivity and our products is like one of the most important things we do now. So a lot of the what has been shifted towards solving problems in our products with AI as a foundational building block. Like if you think about new feature development, you like there's a lot of things that weren't possible before that are possible now because AI can like bridge from what the human wants into what our systems need to do.
Yeah, that's probably a good segue into like the next area I wanted to talk to you about. So I think we talk a lot, like we've talked a lot externally and like just conceptually, like velocity makes sense. Where it's like I have an idea, I'll spend like 20 minutes like writing it on paper, and then I just like have someone like have this agent build it, and it's like a pretty good prototype that I can then share to with somebody, and we just have like a conversation about it. But can you talk a little bit about like the quality? Because I think that might be probably,
Mhm.
or maybe it's as important, but probably less well understood.
Yeah.
So there's a prototyping velocity and so on, but as you get into like actually shipping things into production and just like the quality of what you're able to build, like how does AI impact that or factor into that?
Yeah, I think um, this is maybe the next frontier in a lot of ways. Like prototypes are getting close to free, um, and you can just do this incredible product lifecycle where you're always communicating in prototypes. You see exactly what it's going to be like for the customer. Um, that has changed how we work. And then now the question is, once you have the prototype where you think it nails it, how do you go make that quality that you can actually deploy for customers and it's going to work reliably? And some of that is like there's a mix. So in some ways that's actually the new bottleneck, right? Which is just like people are reading code still to make sure that it works. That's usually the expectation. Um, and there's a lot of higher level thinking too that goes into that, and testing. Like how do you build a test set that proves that this is going to work reliably. There's a lot of like experience and intuition into building that test set. That is why I think engineers are still like a critical part of how we do the work. Even if code is like easier to write, it's coming up with the systems that make sure that it runs reliably. That is a big part of the job now. So there's part of that. I do think though that agents are also helping in that part of the process. So we have like code review agents that help us like find bugs that maybe a human wasn't paying close enough attention to see. That's hugely additive because it's just, again, it's just like there's it's all bonus, right? Like if you catch a bug with an agent that a human missed, that's just one problem you didn't have to fix later.
Right.
And so there's a lot of that. We're looking at also like techniques where the agent helps explain to the human what the code does, just so that their life cycle of reading the changes is faster. So it's like, oh, here's an intro to what you're looking at. That speeds up that initial process of getting up to speed. I still think currently with the current models, I don't really trust them to be the designers of the tests of like, how do we know that this is working? I find that they tend to make tests that miss the point still, and so that's a huge part of like what the engineering teams are doing is like what is the thing that proves that this works and scales and will be reliable for the next year.
Yeah. Um, all right. So maybe rounding into like the last general area that I was hoping to talk to you about. So if I think about, you have the foundation models as like the base layer, you have the agent substrate, which for us is Goose and everything that we've been talking about there. And then there's the end like applications of getting a lot of this work done, or like more, as you know, more importantly, like getting it out to customers, like making their lives better. So maybe on the getting the work done front to start, can you talk a little bit about Builderbot? Because yeah, like I had my first experience with it today. It was really cool. But what is Builderbot? I think you're spending a lot of time on that now. Like what is that tool, and how does that move the ball forward for Block?
Yeah, and so the three bots. I love the naming on this, by the way. I think this was a Jack invention. So moneybot is for our consumer facing automation. Managerbot is for business facing, like Square sellers, and then Builderbot is for us internally. And under the hood, like we've been talking about Goose as the agent harness, and Opus 4.6 or GPT 5.4 or GLM 5. Those are examples of the LLM. Builderbot uses those two things, and then probably the easiest way to think about it is like the collection of capabilities that you bring into the harness. Like I was mentioning before, a lot of the design. So Goose can run any kind of tool. A lot of the work for internal automation is figuring out what tools it should have so that you can actually do the things that Block employees need to do. And that's what Builderbot is it's those like kind of the all the glue and bringing in together all the capabilities that we need, and then making it convenient to use. So an example is we run this on Slack, right? That's where most people get first introduced to it. Incredibly powerful to be part of that early conversation, like when people are working with each other, to just be like, hey, the bot, how does this work, or what do I need to know about this? That's already had this enormous impact. But that same thing also is like becoming very rapidly successful at reducing operational load. So an example of that is like, say that we're having someone is coming to ask for help from a platform team or something like that. Like Builderbot can be the first thing to answer because it knows all of the code, knows how everything works, and so it's just kind of smoothing out those like operational burden. Also true for incident management, for example. So like one of the main ways we make a reliable system is you don't really plan for things to always work all the time. That's unrealistic. Instead, what you optimize for is how quickly you can fix any problems. And so now what we have in most of our systems is that Builderbot, as soon as an error is detected, Builderbot will like wake up and start triaging. And so by the time a human manages to come find like and connect and look at it, hopefully there's already an analysis of what's wrong and how to fix it. And that's actually been working incredibly well. And so yeah, that's the way to think about Builderbot. Is it's an instance of Goose running on a frontier, very powerful model that has all the tools it needs to do work at Block. There's a ton more to this that's really cool. Like I'm very excited about our new remote workstations. So if you want, like I was mentioning, I now work on a lot of projects all at once, and so my laptop becomes like this limiting factor on how many things I can do at a time, because it's like you can only compile so much at once. So we now have these remote machines that Builderbot will go run on and like do work for you. You can do that overnight, like close your laptop and come back to things in the morning. So it's kind of a lot of new interfaces so that people can have agents running more automatically or at higher scale, and then all the tools it needs to do the work.
I think I need to talk to you about those remote workstations because I was building the thing with Builderbot and I was like, you should use that, but you don't have access to it yet, so we can build it locally and it's a little slower. So
Yeah,
I'll bug you after about how to get in there. Um, so we've talked. So okay, everything we've talked about is like kind of been internally focused, I'd say. But you've mentioned moneybot and managerbot a few
yeah,
times, and I think ultimately the most valuable thing we can do for with all of this technology is to deliver it to our customers and help them manage their businesses better and manage their financial lives better. So when you think about, well, maybe like 6 years back, just talk about what managerbot and moneybot are. I know we've talked a
yeah.
little bit about that, but what roles do you envision those playing for our customers, 12 18 months down the line?
Yeah, right. I think so. So okay, so Moneybot. It's in Cash App. It's rolled out fairly widely now. I think
It's
is
about 20%,
maybe not
I think.
everyone. What was that?
I think it's 20%
Yeah,
rollout now.
yeah. So not everyone has it, but a lot of people do. And so in Cash App you can click on, it's got a nice little smiley face, and you click on it, and it has access to basically all of the things that you can do in Cash App. Like more or less, Moneybot can do everything in Cash App that you can do. So you can ask it questions about like how you're spending money, how would you go about setting up like a savings goal. Uh, it will it will actually like help you operate the interface. Like if you can't find the right place, it will navigate you to the right place. And I think that's like the foundation. What we've done really well right now is this like foundational setup where Moneybot can control basically anything you can do in Cash App. And we've done I think a really incredible work on making that intuitive and a system where it never does anything you wouldn't want it to do, right? Like it never moves money for you. It instead shows you a really clean interface where it will tee up a transaction, but you as a human are always involved before anything happens. So you approve it or you see this like nice confirmation page. That's some like I think we're doing really cool things in the generative UI space around that. And so, but and let me cover ManagerBot, and then I'll talk about where I think they're both going. So ManagerBot is the same idea, but for sellers. And with business operations, I think it's a slightly different space, right? Because um, when you're working on your personal finances, it's less data and you want it to be faster. And so it's really nice to have this like fluid conversation, really get insights quickly, take actions quickly. Like if you just want to deposit $200, you want that to take like a couple of seconds. We do a really good job of making that fast and efficient. With ManagerBot, there's a lot more of the like, oh, like this is something that might take a couple of hours. And so we're also looking at interfaces there that push into that frontier in the same way we do for employees, where it's like, oh, like let that run remotely and take a while and manage these like long-lived tasks or do them proactively for you before you need to do them. Because when you're running a business, there's just a lot of work to do, and all of the things that are on the back end, we would rather have a bot able to do that for you so you can focus on like the parts that really matter. So both are the same ideas. It's like AI that can operate our systems and make it easier for our customers to focus on what they need to focus on. Okay, so where are those going? I think there's two angles that I'm really excited about in both of these. One of them is the proactive intelligence layer, and so what that means is that like it's going to take actions for you before you need to ask it. Like what we find a lot of the times is you give people this empty text box and they don't know what to do with it. And so how can we actually just like, because we have this existing relationship, how can we suggest to you what would be useful for us to do? And even increasingly like prevent bad outcomes for you. Like stuff that like, maybe if you're a Cash App customer and you have an upcoming bill, could we like prompt you to deposit some money so that you don't so that you've got enough in advance for that like Netflix subscription, that kind of thing. ManagerBot, same thing, but more complexity. Like how could we just like help you with the operations, like manage upcoming appointments or booking your time cards, that kind of thing. And so that proactive layer, really cool. I think there's a lot we can do there, and we're already starting to see the value. Then the next thing is like giving you this generative experience, and the there's a lot of intermediate milestones that I think will be really cool, but the long-term vision of that is that you as a customer should just be able to ask us to do something for you, and we will on the fly use AI to make it happen. And so you don't have to wait for us to, you don't have to send us feedback and ask for a feature. You can just come to these like agentic interfaces and say like, hey, I need something that does this, and we'll just build it.
Yeah, and that to me, like we sounds somewhat like science fiction, where it's like you're a Square seller, you have this like really nuanced like inventory piece of software that you need for maybe your business is like really specific, and the idea that rather than waiting for Square to build it, you just say like these are the specifications I need, this is my use case, and it actually just builds it for you. Again, it feels science fictiony, but it doesn't actually seem like it's that far into the future.
Yeah, I honestly think that even if we never get a better model, we can make that happen with the current models.
Yeah,
And it's about the kind of agentic engineering that we need to do, but I'm confident we can do it.
yeah. Well, Brad, we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Anything you think we should have talked about that we didn't?
No, this is great. I think maybe just the one thing that um, I would say more about proactive intelligence is that I think this is where a lot of value is, because it's really like there's a lot of I really think that the we have a history of doing this well, and that it's probably one of the things that we can be most competitive as Block. So just to give you an example, like we are, I think, fantastic at risk, and that is it. Like that is a form of proactive intelligence, right? Where if you're making transactions, we protect you from losing money by preventing fraud on the platform. And it's a kind of proactive intelligence that when it's working well, it's completely invisible,
Yeah,
but I think we're excellent at it. Lending is the same way, right? Like the fact that you don't have to like reach out to us for a loan, we can actually just like offer a loan proactively based on your cash flow. That's an example of proactive intelligence that we've been doing for years. And so I think the thing that's like a thing we're very good at as a company. So the next step to me is just connecting those same ideas into the like much more powerful surface that AI can then go take actions for you. And so that's something that I think, again, like, we have this existing relationship with so many customers, and I think that layer is how we're going to take it and turn it into these experiences that you can't do without that background relationship.
it does feel like we've talked a lot about proactive intelligence. I know like Jack and externally and internally has talked a lot about it. Do you feel like that's like is that focus unique, or is it just like our capabilities and the fact that we've kind of been doing this for years and years and years with or without AI, and we can now like
Yeah.
pivot with an AI? Like, does this make this is our ability to execute on that vision? Do you think relatively unique among the peer set that you've observed?
I think it is unique, and there's a few reasons why. One is the like fundamental data that we have as a company that other companies don't have. That's like a really like that's why I think a startup would have a really hard time even approaching this problem today. And then the other thing that's necessary but not sufficient. And then the other thing that we have to be good at that I think we're proving we are good at is the being on the frontier of applying AI to problems and figuring out how to like so turn all of that data that we have into like real world solutions with AI. And I think we're showing both ends of that very successfully today. And I think that gives us the best opportunity to be the first company that figures out how to bridge them together.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. Brad, thank you so much for the time. This is awesome. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.